At my brother's engagement dinner, he laughed. I hope I never end up like him. Poor, no job, no kid. Also his wife is the breadwinner. The room burst out laughing. My uncle said, women don't want useless husband. Even my MOM chuckled. Then the bride stood up, walked to me, and said, I think they should know something. The room fell silent. My name is Marcus Hale, and let me tell you something right off the bat. I'm 35 years old and apparently the family disappointment. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Might as well own it since everyone else has already slapped that label on my forehead and called it a day. You know how every family has that one guy who just can't seem to get his act together according to everyone else's standards? Well, congratulations, you're looking at him. Or reading about him. Whatever. So here's the deal. I'm married to Claire, who happens to make more money than me. And before you start rolling your eyes and muttering something about modern times or gender roles, trust me, I've heard it all. The thing is, Claire's got this killer job at some tech company doing something with data analytics that honestly makes my brain hurt when she tries to explain it. She's smart as hell, works her ass off, and yeah, she brings home the bigger paycheck. Good for her, right? That's what I thought too, until I realized that in the eyes of my dear, loving family, this apparently makes me about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. I work part-time shifts at whatever I can find, retail, warehouse work, you name it. Not exactly glamorous, but hey, it pays some bills. Lost my last full-time gig about 8 months ago when the company decided they could automate half their workforce. Thanks, technology. Really appreciate that kick in the teeth. Now I pick up freelance work when I can, writing, web design, odd jobs that pay cash under the table. It's not consistent, it's not predictable, and it sure as hell doesn't impress anyone at family gatherings. But here's what really gets me fired up. While everyone's busy judging my employment status, guess who's handling literally everything else? That's right, yours truly. I pay the bills, every single one of them. I balance the checkbook, deal with the mortgage company, argue with the insurance people, and make sure the lights stay on. I cook dinner almost every night because Claire works late and comes home exhausted. I fix whatever breaks around the house. And let me tell you, in a house that's pushing 40 years old, something's always breaking. Last week, it was the garbage disposal. Before that, it was the bathroom faucet that decided to turn our master bath into Niagara Falls. I grocery shop, I do laundry, I remember anniversaries and birthdays and whose turn it is to host Christmas dinner. I'm the one who called the plumber when the basement flooded. I'm the one who spent 3 hours on hold with the cable company to get our internet working again. And I'm the one who drove 2 hours to help my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, move her furniture when her son couldn't be bothered to show up. But does any of that count? Does any of that make me a contributing member of society? Hell no. You know who does get all the credit and praise and backpatting? My older brother, Darren. Oh, Darren. Where do I even start with this guy? He's 38, 3 years older than me, and he's what my mother Ruth likes to call the successful one. Darren's got this corporate job with a fancy title that involves a lot of meetings and PowerPoint presentations. He wears expensive suits, drives a leased BMW, and talks about synergy and paradigm shifts like he invented the damn concepts. The family thinks he walks on water, and honestly, sometimes I think he believes it too. Here's my favorite part about St. Darren. The man can't boil water without burning it, has never changed a tire in his life, and once called me in a panic because he couldn't figure out how to reset his router. But somehow, he's the golden child while I'm the family screw-up. Makes perfect sense, right? And my mother, God love her, but Ruth has this special talent for making you feel about 2 inches tall without even trying. She's got this way of smiling sweetly while she delivers these little verbal daggers that just slide right between your ribs. At least Darren makes us proud. She'll say with that trademark sigh of hers, like she's mourning the loss of a second successful son. Or my personal favorite, I just don't understand where we went wrong with you, Marcus. Thanks, Mom. Really puts the cherry on top of an already fantastic day. The thing that kills me is that I've made so many sacrifices over the years, and none of them seem to register. When Dad had his heart attack 5 years ago, who do you think was at the hospital every single day? While Darren was too busy with an important project to visit more than twice a week. I was there holding Mom's hand and dealing with doctors and insurance companies and making sure Dad had everything he needed. When my cousin Jessica was going through her messy divorce, who helped her move out of her apartment and drove the U-Haul. When Uncle Raymond needed someone to help him clean out his garage after his wife died, who showed up with work gloves and spent the entire weekend sorting through 40 years of memories. But none of that matters, apparently. None of that makes me a success in their eyes. Success, according to the Hale Family Manual, is measured purely in dollar signs and job titles and how impressive you sound when someone asks what you do for a living. It doesn't matter that I'm reliable, that I show up when people need help, that I keep my word and take care of my responsibilities. What matters is that Darren can afford to take his dates to expensive restaurants while I clip coupons and shop at discount stores. I'm the invisible one in this family, tolerated but not celebrated, included but not valued. I'm the cautionary tale they use to make themselves feel better about their own choices. At least I'm not like Marcus. They probably think when they're lying awake at night worrying about their own problems. I'm the safety net that lets them sleep better, knowing that no matter how bad things get for them, at least they're not the family failure. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being the punchline, tired of being looked down on, tired of having my contributions dismissed because they don't come with a corporate letterhead. I love Claire, I love our life together, and I'm proud of the man I am, even if nobody else seems to be. But damn, sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to have my own family actually respect me for once, instead of using me as their go-to example of how not to live your life. So there I am, minding my own damn business on a Tuesday morning, sipping my coffee and scrolling through job listings on my laptop, when the mailman delivers what I can only describe as a weapon of mass family destruction. It's sitting there in our stack of bills and junk mail like a ticking time bomb. This fancy cream-colored envelope with gold lettering that practically screams, "Expensive event ahead." The return address makes my stomach drop faster than a lead balloon. The Hale family. Oh, fantastic. Just what I needed to make my week complete. I already know what this is before I even crack the seal. Darren's been dating this woman, Lydia Bennett, for about a year now, and according to the Family Gossip Network, which is more efficient than CNN when it comes to spreading news, he finally popped the question. Lucky her, right? She gets to marry into this circus of judgment and passive-aggressive commentary disguised as loving concern. I almost feel sorry for the woman, but then again, she said yes to Darren, so her judgment might already be questionable. The invitation is exactly what you'd expect from my brother, over the top, pretentious, and designed to make everyone feel like they're not quite good enough to be there. Mr. and Mrs. Darren Hale-to-be request the honor of your presence at an engagement celebration dinner. Honor of my presence? Please. More like they need someone to serve as the family cautionary tale so everyone else can feel better about their life choices. The venue listed makes my wallet weep just reading it. Hillcrest Country Club. Of course it's Hillcrest. Because nothing says, "We're better than you," quite like holding your party at a place where the membership fee probably costs more than I make in 6 months. Claire's at work when I discover this little gem, so I can't even vent to her about it right away. Instead, I stare at this invitation like it's written in hieroglyphics, trying to figure out how the hell I'm supposed to navigate this social minefield without losing what's left of my sanity. The date is set for next Saturday evening. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8. Because of course it is. These people wouldn't know how to throw a casual backyard barbecue if their lives depended on it. By the time Claire gets home that evening, I'm already 3 beers deep and have mentally rehearsed at least 14 different excuses for why we can't attend. Food poisoning, sudden work emergency, spontaneous vacation to anywhere that doesn't have cell phone reception. You name it, I've considered it. She takes one look at the invitation and then at my face, and I can see her doing that thing she does where she's trying to decide whether to be supportive or brutally honest. "We have to go, don't we?" she says, and I can hear the resignation in her voice. Claire's met my family exactly 4 times in the 3 years we've been married, and each encounter has been about as pleasant as a root canal performed by a drunk dentist. She's polite to them, because that's who she is, but I can see the way she tenses up whenever my mother makes one of her helpful comments about how Claire must be so tired from carrying the financial burden of our household. But here's where life decides to kick me in the teeth just for fun. Claire can't even go with me. She's got this massive project deadline at work, some client presentation that could make or break her team's quarterly numbers. She's been stressed about it for weeks, working late every night and bringing home stacks of paperwork that make our dining room table look like mission control for NASA. There's no way she can take Saturday evening off, and honestly, I wouldn't ask her to. Her career is important, and unlike my family, I actually support the people I care about. So now I'm faced with the delicious prospect of walking into that country club alone, like some pathetic loser who couldn't even convince his wife to show up for his brother's engagement party. I can already hear the whispered conversations. Where's Claire? Oh, she's working again? How convenient. Poor Marcus, he can't even get his own wife to prioritize family events. The thought makes my jaw clench so hard I'm surprised I don't crack a molar. My phone rings while I'm spiraling into this pleasant little anxiety attack, and of course it's my mother. Ruth has this sixth sense about family events. She always calls right when you're trying to figure out how to weasel out of them. Her voice is that special combination of sweet and manipulative that she's perfected over the decades. Marcus, honey, you got the invitation, right? Isn't it beautiful? Lydia has such wonderful taste. She picked out the design herself. Yeah, Mom, it's gorgeous. Really captures that whole, we have money and you don't aesthetic they were probably going for. I try to sound enthusiastic, but even I can hear how flat my voice sounds. Yeah, Mom, it's nice. Really classy. You and Claire will be there, won't you? It's so important for family to support each other during these special moments. Darren is just over the moon about this party. He's been planning it for months, you know. He really wants his little brother there to celebrate with him. Little brother. I'm 35 years old, but in Ruth's mind, I'm still the scrawny kid who couldn't quite measure up to his older sibling. The worst part is how she says it like it's endearing, like being treated as less than is somehow charming. I break the news about Claire's work situation, and I can practically hear my mother's disapproval through the phone. There's this pause, this little intake of breath that means she's about to say something that's going to piss me off. Well, that's unfortunate. I hope people don't get the wrong idea. You know how these things look. Because God forbid anyone think that my wife prioritizes her career over schmoozing with people who barely tolerate her husband. She's got a work deadline, Mom. It's not like she's choosing to skip this for fun. I'm sure she is, sweetie. It's just that family should come first sometimes, don't you think? But I suppose everyone has different priorities these days. And there it is, that special Ruth Hale brand of guilt wrapped up in understanding words. She's not directly criticizing Claire. Oh no, she's just making gentle observations about modern society and how it's apparently fallen apart because people actually take their job seriously. I spend the rest of the phone call listening to her gush about the menu. Apparently there will be both chicken and beef options, because we're fancy like that, and the guest list, which sounds like a who's who of people I went to high school with and tried to avoid even then. Uncle Raymond will be there, naturally, because no family gathering is complete without his particular brand of loud, obnoxious commentary. My cousin Hannah will be there too, along with her husband Dave, who thinks he's hilarious but is actually about as funny as a tax audit. By the time I hang up, I've basically talked myself into going. Not because I want to, hell no, but because the alternative is dealing with months of passive-aggressive comments about how I couldn't even be bothered to show up for my own brother's engagement party. Sometimes you pick your battles, and sometimes your battles pick you. This feels like the latter. So here I am, committed to spending an evening at Hillcrest Country Club, surrounded by people who think I'm a disappointment, celebrating a brother who's never missed an opportunity to remind me how much more successful he is. Without Claire there as my buffer, it's going to be like walking into a lion's den wearing a meat suit. What could possibly go wrong? Walking into Hillcrest Country Club feels like stepping into some alternate universe where everyone's got more money than sense and isn't afraid to show it. The place practically reeks of old money and new pretensions. You know, that special combination of leather furniture and superiority complex that makes your skin crawl the moment you cross the threshold. The valet parking attendant looks at my 10-year-old Honda Civic like it's carrying the plague. But hey, at least I own the damn thing outright, instead of leasing some overpriced status symbol I can't actually afford. The grand dining hall is exactly what you'd expect from a place called Hillcrest. All marble floors and crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses. The ceilings got these elaborate moldings that look like they were carved by angels, or at least people who charge like they were. Everything sparkles under the warm lighting, from the silverware to the champagne glasses to the self-satisfied smiles of the guests who clearly belong here way more than I do. The whole scene screams, money talks, and if you can't hear it, you don't belong. White-gloved waiters glide around the room like they're performing some kind of choreographed dance, carrying trays of what I'm sure are artisanal hors d'oeuvres that probably have names I can't pronounce. I spot something that looks like crackers with fish eggs on top. Caviar, I guess. And wonder how many hours I'd have to work at my part-time retail gig to afford one of those little bites. The math makes my head hurt, so I decide to stick with whatever's free and doesn't require a second mortgage to enjoy. The air is thick with the sound of clinking glasses, forced laughter, and conversations about stock portfolios and vacation homes in places I've only seen in magazines. Everyone's dressed to the nines, the men in suits that actually fit properly, the women in cocktail dresses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I'm wearing my one decent suit, the navy blue one I bought for job interviews about 2 years ago, and I'm already feeling like I showed up to a black tie event in jeans and sneakers. But the real kicker? The moment I walk into that room, I swear every conversation stops for about half a second. It's like one of those old Western movies where the stranger walks into the saloon and the piano player stops mid-song. Suddenly I've got all these eyes on me, and not in a good way. More like the way people look at a car accident, with that mixture of curiosity and pity that makes you want to crawl under the nearest rock and die. And there she is, my dear cousin Hannah, standing near the bar with a martini in her hand, and that smirk on her face that I remember from childhood. Hannah's always been the family's designated smartass, the one who thinks she's clever but really just comes off as mean-spirited. She's wearing this emerald green dress that matches her eyes and probably her black little heart. And the moment she spots me walking in alone, I can practically see the gears turning in her head. Well, she says, loud enough for half the room to hear. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. She takes a sip of her martini and gives me this theatrical once-over that makes me feel like I'm being appraised for auction. Where's your wife, Marcus? Don't tell me Claire's too busy with work again. The way she says work makes it sound like some kind of dirty word, like having a career is somehow offensive to polite society. I can feel my face getting hot, but I try to keep my voice level. Yeah, she's got a big deadline. You know how it is. Except Hannah doesn't know how it is, because Hannah married her college boyfriend Dave right after graduation and hasn't worked a day since. Must be nice to have that luxury. Of course she is, Hannah replies. And there's that laugh again, the one that's designed to make you feel about 2 inches tall. It's such a shame when work comes before family, don't you think? But I suppose everyone has their priorities. The way she emphasizes priorities makes it clear that in her opinion, Claire's got hers all screwed up. And just like that, the vultures start circling. A few other family members who overheard the exchange suddenly find reasons to drift over in our direction. All fake smiles and thinly veiled curiosity. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Raymond's wife, comes swooping in with her perfectly coiffed hair and her pearl necklace that she probably sleeps in. Marcus, dear, you look wonderful, she gushes, but her eyes are doing that thing where they're scanning for weaknesses. Flying solo tonight, I see. How independent of you. Independent. Right. Like showing up to a family event without your spouse is some kind of bold lifestyle choice instead of just shitty timing. The whole group starts moving toward the dining area, and I realize with growing dread that there's probably assigned seating. Of course there's assigned seating. This is Darren's show, which means everything has been planned down to the last detail to maximize the social hierarchy. Sure enough, there's a little easel by the entrance to the dining room with a seating chart that looks like it was designed by someone with a PhD in passive-aggressive event planning. I scan the chart looking for my name, and my heart sinks when I find it. Table 3, seat 8. The furthest possible spot from the head table where Darren and Lydia will be holding court. I'm literally as far away from the action as you can get without being seated in the parking lot. It's like being sent to the kids' table at Thanksgiving. Except I'm 35 years old, and this is supposed to be a celebration where I'm welcome. The message is crystal clear. You're family, so we have to invite you, but don't get any ideas about being important enough to sit with the grown-ups. I'm pretty sure they stuck me next to Great Aunt Mildred, who's been deaf for the past decade and spends most family gatherings asking people to repeat themselves and complaining about how loud the music is. As I make my way to my designated spot in Siberia, I can't help but notice how the room is arranged. Darren and Lydia are at this elaborate head table that's decorated with enough flowers to supply a small wedding. The lighting is perfect, the centerpiece is Instagram ready, and their chairs might as well have King and Queen written on the backs. They're positioned so that everyone in the room has a clear view of them, like they're the main attraction at some kind of dinner theater. And speaking of the main attraction, there's Darren himself, working the room like he's running for political office. He's got this smile plastered on his face that doesn't quite reach his eyes, and he's moving from table to table, shaking hands and making small talk with the practiced ease of someone who's never met a social situation he couldn't dominate. Every few minutes, he throws back his head and laughs at something someone said, and it's that booming, confident laugh that says, "I'm successful and everyone loves me." Lydia's right there beside him, looking like she stepped out of a magazine spread. She's got this elegance about her that makes everyone else in the room look a little rough around the edges, and she seems genuinely happy to be there. I have to admit, she's beautiful, tall, blonde, with the kind of smile that lights up the whole room. What she sees in my brother is beyond me. But then again, Darren's always been good at selling himself to people who don't know him well enough to see through the act. The whole scene feels like some kind of elaborate performance, and I'm clearly not one of the featured players. I'm background noise, comic relief, the guy who's there to make everyone else feel better about their own lives. As I settle into my assigned seat at the reject table, I can't shake the feeling that this whole evening is going to be a masterclass in public humiliation. But hey, at least the bread rolls look decent. Dinner starts with the kind of small talk that makes you want to stab yourself in the eye with a salad fork just to create some genuine excitement. You know the drill. Everyone's discussing the weather like it's the most fascinating topic in human history, commenting on how lovely the flowers look, and making those generic observations about how nice it is to see everyone together again. It's the social equivalent of elevator music, designed to fill space without actually meaning anything. I'm sitting there at my exile table, trying to make conversation with great Aunt Mildred, who keeps asking me to speak up even though I'm practically shouting at this point. The woman sitting to my left is somebody's +1 who looks about as thrilled to be here as I am, and she's spending most of her time checking her phone under the table. Can't say I blame her. If I thought I could get away with it, I'd probably be doing the same thing. The appetizers arrive with all the fanfare you'd expect from a place that charges $50 for a piece of fish. Some kind of fancy soup that tastes like it was made by someone who went to culinary school just to learn how to make regular food complicated. I'm trying to figure out if those green things floating around are herbs or just expensive decoration when Uncle Raymond's voice booms across the room like a foghorn in a library. "Hey, Marcus," he calls out from his table, which is naturally much closer to the action than mine. "How's the job hunt going? Still trying out those little side jobs of yours?" The way he says little side jobs makes it sound like I'm selling friendship bracelets on street corners instead of doing legitimate freelance work that actually pays money. But that's Raymond for you. About as subtle as a brick through a window and twice as destructive. Everyone at his table turns to look at me, along with most of the people at the surrounding tables. Suddenly, I'm the main attraction, and not in a good way. I can feel my face getting hot, but I try to keep my voice steady when I answer. "Just keeping busy with various projects, Raymond. You know how it is." "Various projects," he repeats with that laugh that sounds like a seal having an asthma attack. That's a fancy way of putting it. Back in my day, we called that being unemployed. The laughter that follows ripples through the nearby tables like a wave of secondhand embarrassment. "Thanks, Raymond. Really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with the entire room." But the worst part isn't even Raymond's loud mouth. It's seeing my mother's reaction from the head table. Ruth has this little smile on her face, the kind that says she's trying to look disapproving of Raymond's rudeness, while secretly enjoying every minute of it. She gives this tiny shake of her head, like she's saying, "Oh, that Raymond," but really she's thinking, well, someone had to say it. Then Darren decides to get in on the action, because God forbid he miss an opportunity to shine in front of his audience. He's sitting there at the head table looking like the king of the world, and he turns toward my table with that smirk I know all too well. It's the same expression he used to get when we were kids, and he was about to do something that would get me in trouble with Mom and Dad. "You know, Marcus," he says, and his voice carries perfectly across the room because of course it does. "I keep telling people you're taking some time to figure things out. That's what they call it these days, right? A career break. The way he emphasizes career break makes it sound like the most ridiculous concept he's ever heard of. Must be nice to have that luxury. Some of us never got to take a break from, actually working. The laughter this time is genuine. Not the polite chuckling you get when someone tells a mediocre joke, but real, honest-to-God amusement at my expense. I can see people leaning toward each other, whispering comments that I'm sure are absolutely hilarious. Someone at table 2 actually slaps their knee. Like Darren just delivered the punchline of the century instead of taking a cheap shot at his own brother. Well, I managed to say, trying to inject some humor into my voice to deflect the sting. Somebody's got to keep the freelance economy afloat, right? It's a weak comeback and everyone knows it, but it's either that or sit there like a punching bag while they take turns throwing haymakers at my self-esteem. But Darren's not done. Oh no, he's just getting warmed up. Semi-retired at 35, he says, shaking his head in mock amazement. I have to admit, I'm kind of jealous. Most of us have to wait until we're in our 60s to stop working full-time. The bastard actually winks at Lydia when he says this, like they're sharing some private joke about what a loser his little brother turned out to be. My mother, my own mother, actually chuckles at this. Not a big laugh, mind you, just this soft little sound that she tries to cover with her napkin like that somehow makes it better. But I hear it, and more importantly, everyone else hears it too. There's something uniquely crushing about realizing that your own mother finds your life situation amusing enough to laugh about in public. I grip my water glass a little tighter and try to focus on not losing my shit in front of all these people. The thing is, what they're saying isn't even technically wrong. I am underemployed by traditional standards. I don't have a steady full-time job with benefits and a retirement plan. I do cobble together income from multiple sources, and yeah, it's not always predictable or impressive sounding when people ask what I do for a living. But what kills me is how they're completely ignoring everything else I do. Like the fact that I managed our household finances so well that we paid off Claire's student loans 2 years early. Or that I've been the one handling mom's doctor appointments since dad's been having those dizzy spells. Or that when cousin Jake needed help moving last month, guess who showed up with a truck and spent 12 hours hauling furniture up 3 flights of stairs? None of that counts, apparently. None of that makes me a contributing member of society in their eyes. What matters is the job title on your business card and the number on your paycheck, and by those measures, I'm falling short. Way short. Uncle Raymond isn't finished with his comedy routine yet. Tell you what, Marcus, he says, raising his wine glass like he's about to make a toast. When you do land that big job, the first round of drinks is on you. And knowing your luck, that'll probably be sometime around 2030. More laughter, more knowing looks, more of that special family bonding that happens when everyone gangs up on the weak link in the chain. The worst part is how normal this all feels. Like this is just standard operating procedure for family gatherings. Find Marcus, take a few shots at his life choices, get some laughs, move on to the next topic. I'm not even angry anymore, just tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired of being the designated punching bag for a group of people who are supposed to love and support me. I look around the room at all these faces I've known my entire life, and I realize that not one person is going to speak up for me. Not one of them is going to say, hey, that's enough, or maybe we should talk about something else. They're all too busy enjoying the show, too comfortable with their roles in this little family drama where I'm always the comic relief and they're always the audience. So I sit there, fork halfway to my mouth, pretending that their words don't hit like physical blows, and I wait for this course to end so we can move on to whatever fresh hell the main dish has in store. The main course arrives with all the pomp and circumstance you'd expect from a place that probably charges more for one dinner than I spend on groceries in a month. Some kind of fancy beef that the waiter describes using words I'm pretty sure he made up on the spot, paired with vegetables that have been artfully arranged instead of just, put on the plate like normal food. Everyone's making appreciative noises about the presentation and the wine pairings, and for a brief, blessed moment, I think maybe the conversation has moved on from roasting Marcus alive. I should have known better. I really should have known better. The attack comes right after the main course plates are cleared away, when everyone's had just enough wine to lower their inhibitions, but not quite enough to pass out under the table. That dangerous sweet spot where people think they're being charming and witty when they're actually being complete assholes. The waiters are moving around with their usual choreographed precision, refilling water glasses and clearing crumbs, when Darren suddenly stands up. Oh shit. Here we go? He's got that look on his face, the one that says he's about to deliver what he thinks is going to be the performance of a lifetime. The same expression he used to get in high school when he was running for student body president, all confidence and charisma and barely contained smugness. He taps his champagne glass with a fork, and the crystal makes this perfect little ding that somehow manages to cut through all the ambient chatter in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, and I swear his voice has gotten deeper just for this moment. Family and friends, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The room falls silent with that kind of focused anticipation you usually only see at award shows or public executions. Everyone turns toward the head table, their faces lit up with expectation, ready to bask in whatever wisdom or charm Darren's about to bestow upon us lucky mortals. He's absolutely glowing, standing there in his perfectly tailored suit with his perfectly styled hair and his perfectly practiced smile. This is his moment, his time to shine, and you can tell he's been rehearsing this little speech in his head for weeks, maybe months. Hell, knowing Darren, he probably practiced it in the mirror until he got every gesture and pause just right. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for being here tonight. He continues, raising his glass in a toast that encompasses the entire room. It means the world to Lydia and me to have all of you here to celebrate this incredible milestone in our lives. Lydia beams at him from her seat, looking every inch the proud fiancée, and honestly, she seems genuinely happy. Poor woman has no idea what kind of family she's marrying into. The crowd makes those appreciative murmuring sounds that people make when they're being acknowledged at fancy events. And I can see phones coming out as people start recording what they probably think is going to be a heartwarming family moment. Oh, if only they knew what was coming. Lydia and I are so grateful to have such a wonderful support system, Darren goes on, his voice getting that slightly emotional quality that politicians use when they want you to think they're being sincere. We're excited to start this new chapter together, surrounded by the people who matter most to us. So far, so good. Standard engagement party speech material. I'm starting to think maybe I misjudged the situation. Maybe Darren's actually going to keep this classy and avoid turning it into another episode of Let's Shit on Marcus. I should have trusted my instincts, because then his gaze lands on me. The smile on his face shifts just slightly, not enough that most people would notice, but I know my brother. I know that look. It's the same expression he used to get right before he'd tell mom and dad about something stupid I'd done, except this time he's got a captive audience of 50 people instead of just our parents. You know, he says, and there's this pause that somehow manages to fill the entire room with tension. Looking around at all of you tonight, I'm reminded of how blessed I am. How blessed we both are. To have successful careers, to be surrounded by family and friends who've achieved so much, to be able to celebrate in a place like this. Here it comes. I can feel it building like a storm system on the horizon, and there's absolutely nothing I can do to stop it. I'm sitting there at my reject table, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, watching my own brother prepare to destroy me in front of everyone I've ever known. And I just hope. He pauses again, letting the suspense build, making sure every eye in the room is focused on him. I just hope I never end up like Marcus. The words hang in the air for a split second, and I swear you could hear a pin drop. Then he delivers the knockout punch. Poor, no job, no kids, and married to a breadwinner. The room explodes, not with gasps of shock or uncomfortable silence, but with genuine, honest-to-God laughter. Real belly laughs from people who think this is the funniest thing they've heard all year. Uncle Raymond literally slams his hand on the table, making the silverware jump, and lets out one of those braying laughs that sounds like a donkey having a seizure. Cousin Hannah has her hand over her mouth, but her eyes are sparkling with delight, and she's making these little snorting sounds that she probably thinks are ladylike, but really just make her sound like a pig at a trough. Even people I barely know are cracking up. Dad's old work buddies, Mom's bridge club friends, random plus ones who don't know me from Adam. They're all having a grand old time at my expense. Someone at table 4 is actually wiping tears from their eyes, like Darren just delivered the punchline of the century instead of publicly humiliating his own flesh and blood. But the cherry on top of this shit sundae? My mother's reaction. Ruth is sitting there at the head table, and instead of looking horrified or disappointed, or even mildly uncomfortable with her older son's public character assassination of her younger son, she's chuckling. Chuckling. She's got her hand partially covering her mouth like she's trying to hide it, but I can see her shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. My own mother finds my life situation so amusing that she can't even pretend to be offended when her golden child uses it as entertainment for a room full of people. The laughter seems to go on forever, rolling through the room in waves as people lean over to whisper additional comments to their table mates. I catch fragments of conversations. Always knew that kid would never amount to much, and poor Claire, having to support a grown man. And remember when we thought Marcus would be the successful one? Each comment is like a knife between the ribs, twisting a little deeper with every word. Uncle Raymond, because apparently he hasn't done enough damage for one evening, decides to add his own commentary to the mix. Women don't want useless husbands, he bellows across the room, raising his wine glass like he's delivering some kind of profound wisdom instead of just being a complete dick. That's what's wrong with this generation. Too many men who think it's okay to let their wives do all the work. More laughter, more nodding heads, more people agreeing that yes, Marcus Hale is definitely the cautionary tale they use to make themselves feel better about their own life choices. I sit there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I'm surprised it doesn't just burst right out of my chest and flop around on the table like a dying fish. My face feels like it's on fire, and I can't tell if I'm about to throw up, pass out, or both. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to stand up, to say something, to defend myself, but my body won't cooperate. I'm just sitting there like a deer in headlights while my entire family takes turns kicking me while I'm down. The worst part isn't even the humiliation. It's the realization that this is who these people really are. This is what they really think of me. All those years of trying to be the good son, the reliable brother, the helpful family member, and this is what I get in return. Public mockery disguised as a toast at my brother's engagement party. As the laughter finally starts to die down and Darren raises his glass for the actual toast part of his little performance, I realize something with crystal clarity. I'm completely alone in this room full of people who are supposed to love me. The laughter continues to echo around me, but inside my head, there's nothing but dead silence. It's like someone reached into my brain and hit the mute button on everything except the sound of my own heartbeat, which is hammering against my ribs like it's trying to break free and escape this nightmare. The weird thing about moments like this is how time seems to slow down and speed up all at once. Each second stretches out like an eternity while the whole thing happens in what feels like a blink. I'm sitting here watching these faces I've known my entire life, and it's like seeing them clearly for the first time. These aren't the people who used to ruffle my hair at Christmas dinner or tell embarrassing stories about when I was little. These are strangers wearing familiar masks, and underneath those masks are people who genuinely find my pain entertaining. People who think my struggles are a punchline worth sharing with a room full of witnesses. Uncle Raymond is still chuckling to himself, shaking his head like Darren just told the joke of the century instead of systematically destroying his own brother's dignity. He takes another sip of his wine and leans over to whisper something to his wife Patricia, who glances in my direction and smirks. Whatever he just said, it was about me, and it wasn't kind. Patricia covers her mouth with her napkin, but I can see her shoulders shaking with laughter. These are people who held me when I was a baby, who came to my high school graduation, who sent me birthday cards every year until I turned 30. Now they're treating me like I'm some kind of sideshow entertainment. Cousin Hannah has finally stopped making those awful snorting sounds, but the grin on her face is pure malice. She's loving every second of this. And why wouldn't she? For as long as I can remember, Hannah's been the family mean girl, the one who always knew exactly which buttons to push and when to push them. She's got that satisfied look that bullies get when they know they've drawn blood. The scary part is how natural it looks on her, like cruelty is her default setting and everything else is just an act. But it's the people who aren't laughing that really get to me. The ones who are just sitting there, quietly watching the show, not participating but not objecting either. Mom's friend Carol, who used to babysit me when I was little. Dad's brother Mike, who taught me how to throw a curveball in the backyard. Cousin Jenny, who cried at my wedding and told me how happy she was that I found someone like Claire. They're all just sitting there, fork in one hand, wine glass in the other, watching my public execution like it's dinner theater. Not one of them speaks up. Not one person in this entire room says, "Hey, that's enough," or "Maybe we should talk about something else," or even just changes the subject to spare me any more humiliation. They're all complicit in their silence, co-conspirators in their refusal to stand up for someone who's supposed to be family. Their silence is somehow worse than the laughter, because at least the people laughing are being honest about their cruelty. These people are just letting it happen, which makes them cowards on top of everything else. I can see some of them looking uncomfortable now that the initial shock has worn off. A few people are shifting in their seats, suddenly very interested in their dessert forks or the pattern on the tablecloth. Someone's aunt, I think her name is Margaret, actually looks a little ashamed, but she's not doing anything about it. She's just sitting there with this expression that says, "I feel bad about this, but not bad enough to actually say something." Thanks for the sympathy, Margaret. Really helpful. The worst part is realizing that this isn't just happening to me. It's been planned. Maybe not the specific words or the exact timing, but the general concept of using me as the family punching bag at this event was always part of the program. This is my role in the family dynamic, and everyone here knows it. I'm the designated loser, the cautionary tale, the guy who makes everyone else feel better about their own choices by comparison. They need me to be a failure so they can be successes. They need me to be struggling so they can be thriving. They need me to be the punchline so they can be the audience. And you know what really drives the knife home? The fact that I've been enabling this for years. Every time Uncle Raymond made one of his jokes about my employment situation, I laughed it off. Every time Hannah made a snide comment about Claire having to support me, I just took it. Every time Mom made one of her passive-aggressive observations about modern marriages and shifting gender roles, I bit my tongue and changed the subject. I taught them that this was okay, that I would just sit there and take it, that they could use me as their emotional punching bag without any consequences. I think about Claire, and for the first time tonight, I'm actually grateful she's not here. Grateful she doesn't have to see this. Doesn't have to watch the people who are supposed to be my family treat me like garbage while she sits there helplessly. Claire would never laugh at someone else's pain like this. Claire would never sit silently while someone she loved was being humiliated in public. Claire would have stood up and said something. Consequences be damned. Because that's the kind of person she is. That's the kind of person I married. And that's the kind of family I should have had. But instead, I got these people. These blood relatives who think DNA gives them the right to treat me however they want. Who confuse familiarity with love and think that because we share genetics, they can say whatever cruel thing pops into their heads, and I'll just have to take it. These people who would never dream of treating a stranger the way they treat me, because at least strangers might fight back. The silence in my head is getting louder, if that makes any sense. It's drowning out the conversations that are starting to pick up again around the room, the clinking of silverware, the rustle of fabric as people shift in their seats. All I can hear is this roaring quiet that feels like standing inside a tornado, where everything is chaos around you, but you're trapped in this pocket of perfect, terrible stillness. I realize I'm gripping my napkin so tightly that my knuckles have gone white. My jaw is clenched so hard it's starting to ache, and there's this bitter taste in my mouth like I've been chewing on pennies. Every muscle in my body is coiled tight, ready to spring into action, but there's nowhere to go and nothing to do except sit here and endure whatever comes next. Because this isn't over. I can feel it in the air, that electric tension that says the storm is still building. Darren's little toast was just the opening act, and now that he's established the theme of the evening, let's all laugh at Marcus. Other people are going to want to get in on the action. They're going to take turns taking shots at me, each one trying to be funnier or more cutting than the last, because that's what families do, right? They support each other through thick and thin, unless one of them is struggling, in which case they turn into a pack of wolves. The silence inside my head is the sound of something breaking. Something that's been cracked for years finally splitting completely in half. It's the sound of giving up, of letting go, of realizing that some things can't be fixed no matter how hard you try. It's the sound of a man finally understanding that he's been fighting a battle he was never meant to win. Hashtag Chapter 7, The Unexpected Voice. The laughter is finally starting to die down, settling into that satisfied murmur that follows a really good joke at someone else's expense. People are leaning back in their chairs, wiping their eyes, sharing those knowing looks that say, "Wasn't that just perfect?" Darren is still standing at the head table, basking in the afterglow of his comedic triumph, accepting the scattered applause and appreciative nods from his adoring audience. He's got that self-satisfied smile plastered across his face like he just delivered the Gettysburg Address, instead of publicly humiliating his own brother for cheap laughs. I'm preparing myself for whatever comes next, probably more good-natured ribbing from Uncle Raymond, or maybe some additional commentary from Hannah about how amusing my situation is. I'm mentally rehearsing my escape plan, figuring out how long I have to sit here before I can politely excuse myself and get the hell out of this nightmare. Maybe I can claim I'm not feeling well, or that I have an early morning, or that my house is on fire. Anything to get away from these people who are supposed to love me, but clearly find my pain entertaining. That's when something completely unexpected happens. Lydia stands up. Not the polite, half-standing thing you do when you're acknowledging applause or reaching for something across the table. She actually pushes her chair back and rises to her full height, which is considerable given that she's wearing heels that probably cost more than I make in a month. The movement is deliberate, purposeful, and somehow manages to cut through all the ambient chatter in the room like a knife through butter. The effect is immediate and electric. Every conversation stops mid-sentence. Every fork freezes halfway to someone's mouth. Every eye in the room suddenly focuses on this elegant blonde woman who, up until this moment, has been the perfect picture of the supportive fiancé, smiling graciously and letting her future husband hold center stage. But there's something different about her now, something in her posture that suggests the evening's entertainment is about to take an unexpected turn. Darren's smile falters just slightly, not enough that most people would notice. But I catch it, that tiny flicker of confusion that crosses his face when something doesn't go according to his carefully orchestrated plan. He's looking at Lydia with the expression of a director who just watched one of his actors go completely off script in the middle of the big scene. "Lydia," he says, and there's a question in his voice that wasn't there a moment ago. But she doesn't look at him. Instead, she starts walking. The sound of her heels clicking against the marble floor is the only noise in the entire room, and it echoes off the high ceilings like gunshots. Click, 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 each step deliberate and measured, like she's walking to the executioner's block. Except she's not the one who's about to get executed. The chandeliers overhead cast moving shadows as she passes beneath them, and somehow the lighting makes her look both beautiful and slightly terrifying, like an avenging angel dressed in designer clothes. She walks the entire length of the dining room, past all the tables full of people who are now watching her with the kind of rapt attention usually reserved for car accidents or celebrity meltdowns. Past Uncle Raymond, who has his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. Past Hannah, whose smirk has been replaced by a look of pure bewilderment. Past my mother, who's sitting there with her mouth slightly open like she's trying to catch flies. And she doesn't stop until she's standing right beside my chair. The silence in the room is so complete you could hear a mouse sneeze. 50 people holding their collective breath, waiting to see what this woman is going to do or say. I can feel the heat radiating from her body as she stands there next to me, and I catch a whiff of her perfume, something expensive and subtle that probably has a French name I can't pronounce. She's close enough that I could reach out and touch her, but I don't move. I'm not sure I could move even if I wanted to. My brain has basically shut down, unable to process what's happening or why it's happening. Darren has gone pale. Actually pale, like someone just told him his stock portfolio crashed or his Ferrari got repossessed. He's standing there at the head table, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, trying to figure out how to regain control of a situation that has clearly spiraled beyond his comprehension. "Lydia, what are you?" he starts to say, but she cuts him off with a single look that could freeze hell over. Uncle Raymond finally lowers his wine glass, and for the first time in recorded history, the man is completely speechless. Hannah has dropped her fork, and the clatter it makes against her plate sounds like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. Even great Aunt Mildred, who's been asking people to repeat themselves all evening, seems to understand that something significant is happening. Lydia turns to face the room, and when she speaks, her voice is calm and clear and carries perfectly to every corner of the space. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice, no theatrical flourishes. Just quiet, controlled authority that somehow commands more attention than all of Darren's showboating combined. "I think they should know something," she says. 5 simple words that land in the silence like bombs. The tension in the room ratchets up another notch, if that's even possible. People are leaning forward in their chairs, desperate to hear what bombshell this woman is about to drop. Cell phones are coming out again, but this time it's not to record a heartwarming family moment. This feels like the kind of thing that might end up on social media with captions like, "You won't believe what happened at this engagement party." Darren looks like he's about to have a stroke. "Lydia, please," he says, and there's a pleading quality to his voice that I've never heard before. Whatever this is about, maybe we should discuss it privately. But she doesn't even acknowledge that he's spoken. Her attention is completely focused on the room full of people who, just moments ago, were laughing at my expense. There's something almost surgical about the way she's looking at them, like she's dissecting each person with her eyes and finding them all wanting. The silence stretches out like a rubber band being pulled to its breaking point. Someone coughs nervously. A chair creaks. Somewhere in the distance, a waiter drops something in the kitchen, and the crash sounds like thunder in the oppressive quiet. But Lydia just stands there, perfectly composed, letting the tension build until everyone in the room is practically vibrating with anticipation. I have no idea what she's going to say. No clue what revelation she's about to share or why she's chosen this moment to share it. All I know is that for the first time all evening, I'm not the one in the spotlight. For the first time tonight, someone else is controlling the narrative. Someone else is holding the room's attention. Someone else is about to determine what happens next. And for some inexplicable reason, she's chosen to stand beside me while she does it. The moment stretches out like taffy, elastic and sweet and slightly dangerous. Darren makes another attempt to regain control, his voice cracking slightly as he says, "Lydia, honey, I think maybe." But she silences him with a gesture so subtle it's barely there, just the slightest movement of her hand, like she's brushing away an annoying insect. The gesture is so effortless, so naturally authoritative, that Darren actually takes a step back, his mouth snapping shut like someone just pulled his strings. The power dynamic in the room has shifted so completely that it's almost dizzying. 10 minutes ago, Darren was the king of this particular castle, basking in the adoration of his subjects while they laughed at his court jester me. Now he looks like a little boy who's been caught doing something he shouldn't, while his fiancée stands there radiating the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing you hold all the cards. I can feel the weight of every eye in the room, but for once, they're not looking at me with pity or amusement or barely concealed contempt. They're looking at the woman standing beside me, waiting to hear whatever truth she's about to reveal. And somehow, impossibly, I get the feeling that whatever she's about to say is going to change everything. The silence has become a living thing, coiled and ready to strike. Uncle Raymond shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Hannah's face has gone from smug satisfaction to nervous uncertainty. My mother looks like she's trying to solve a particularly difficult math problem in her head. And Lydia just stands there, perfectly still, perfectly composed, holding 50 people hostage with nothing more than the promise of words yet to be spoken. Whatever's coming next, it's going to be big. It's going to matter. And for the first time all evening, I have the distinct feeling that I'm not going to be the one getting hurt when it hits. Lydia doesn't speak immediately. She lets the silence hang in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating, while she surveys the room with the kind of calm confidence that makes everyone else look like they're about to jump out of their skin. Her gaze moves deliberately from table to table, making eye contact with specific people, and I swear I can see some of them actually shrinking under her stare. Uncle Raymond suddenly finds his dinner roll fascinating. Hannah starts fidgeting with her jewelry, like it might save her from whatever's coming. When Lydia finally speaks, her voice cuts through the silence like a scalpel through flesh, precise, controlled, and absolutely devastating. "A year ago," she begins, her tone conversational, but somehow carrying the weight of a judge delivering a verdict, Darren nearly lost his job. The words hit the room like a physical blow. I can actually see people recoil, their faces registering shock and confusion. This isn't what they were expecting. This isn't part of the script where Marcus gets torn apart for everyone's entertainment. Darren's face goes from pale to absolutely white. "Lydia, what are you doing?" he hisses, but she doesn't even glance in his direction. She's addressing the room now, and he's just background noise. "He was missing deadlines," she continues, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Important ones. The kind that get you fired in the corporate world, not just reprimanded. His supervisor had already started the paperwork for his termination. Darren was 3 weeks away from being unemployed, and he was too proud to tell anyone in his family that his perfect life was falling apart. The silence in the room has taken on a different quality now. It's not anticipation anymore. It's the kind of shocked quiet that follows a car accident, when everyone's too stunned to process what they've just witnessed. I can see people exchanging glances, trying to figure out if this is some kind of elaborate joke or if the golden boy of the Hale family was actually human after all. But there was one person he called, Lydia says, and now she does look down at me, her expression softer but no less intense. One person who dropped everything to help him. One person who stayed up until 3 in the morning, night after night, helping him restructure his projects, reorganize his presentations, and basically save his career. My heart stops. I remember those late-night phone calls, Darren's voice tight with panic that he tried to disguise as casual concern. Hey, Marcus, you don't happen to know anything about project management software, do you? Marcus, I'm having some trouble with this client presentation. Think you could take a look? I'd thought he was just being a perfectionist, wanting a second opinion. I had no idea his job was on the line. Marcus worked with him for 2 weeks straight. Lydia continues, her voice gaining momentum now, building towards something that feels inevitable and terrible and absolutely necessary. He canceled his own freelance commitments, ignored his own deadlines, and basically put his life on hold to save his brother's career. And when Darren finally turned in those projects, the ones that kept him employed, he never mentioned who had actually done most of the work. Uncle Raymond's wine glass is frozen halfway to his lips again, but this time it's not because he's about to deliver another cutting remark. His mouth is hanging open like he's trying to catch flies, and the superior smirk has been completely wiped from his face. Hannah looks like someone just told her that Santa Claus was real and he was pissed off at her personally. But Lydia isn't done. Oh no, she's just getting started. And then there was the money, she says, and I feel my stomach drop into my shoes. Jesus Christ, she knows about the money. When Darren's rent was due and his checking account was overdrawn because he'd been spending like he was still making his full salary instead of being on probation, who do you think he called? Darren actually takes a step forward, his face twisted with something between panic and rage. Lydia, stop. Please. His voice cracks on the word please, and for the first time in my life, I hear genuine desperation in my brother's voice. He's not the golden child anymore. He's just a man watching his carefully constructed image crumble in real time. $3,000, Lydia says, and the number hangs in the air like an accusation. That's how much Marcus lent him. Not a loan between brothers where you shake hands and figure out the details later. An actual loan, with a payment plan that Marcus wrote up himself because he knew Darren was in real financial trouble. Money that came out of Marcus and Claire's emergency fund. Money they had saved for their own future. I can hear someone gasp. I think it's my mother, but I can't look at her. I can't look at anyone. I'm staring at my hands, remembering how Claire and I had talked about that money, how we'd agreed that family comes first even when family doesn't deserve it, how we'd made the sacrifice without expecting anything in return, not even gratitude. Darren paid it back, Lydia continues, but only after Marcus called him 6 months later to ask about it. Only after Claire had to explain to her boss why she couldn't contribute to the office Christmas fund because their savings account was $3,000 lighter than it should have been. The room is so quiet now that I can hear the air conditioning humming in the vents. 50 people breathing in unison, waiting for the next revelation, the next piece of evidence that their family success story isn't quite what they thought it was. But that's not all, Lydia says, and her voice takes on an almost conversational tone, like she's discussing the weather instead of systematically destroying every assumption these people have made about who deserves their respect and who deserves their mockery. She turns slightly, addressing different sections of the room like a prosecutor working a jury. Mrs. Bennett, she says, looking directly at someone I don't recognize, your father's car. The transmission that died right before Christmas last year. Who fixed it for free? The woman, Mrs. Bennett, apparently, looks like she's about to sink through the floor. Marcus did, she admits in a voice so quiet I almost don't hear it. And Mr. Peterson, Lydia continues, swiveling to face an elderly man at table 2. When your wife was in the hospital, and you needed someone to drive you to visit her every day for 3 weeks because your eyesight isn't what it used to be, who showed up every morning at 7 a.m. sharp? Mr. Peterson's face crumples slightly. Marcus, he whispers. And Jenny, Lydia says, looking at my cousin who's sitting there with tears in her eyes. When your ex-husband was stalking you, and you needed someone to change your locks and install a security system, someone who wouldn't ask questions or make you explain why you were scared, who spent an entire weekend making sure you felt safe in your own home. Jenny doesn't answer out loud, but she nods, and I can see the shame written across her face. The shame of laughing at someone who had helped her when she needed it most. Lydia takes a deep breath, and when she speaks again, her voice is like ice. Cold and clear and sharp enough to cut glass. And tonight, when all of you were laughing at Marcus for being unemployed and struggling and dependent on his wife's income, not one of you mentioned that he spent the last 5 years being the person everyone calls when they need help. Not one of you acknowledged that he's probably done more for the people in this room than anyone else here, including the golden boy you've all been worshiping. She turns to look directly at Darren, and the expression on her face could freeze hell over. You humiliate the one person who held you up when you stumbled. You mock the man who saved your career, who lent you money when you were broke, who has been cleaning up your messes for years without asking for credit or recognition or even basic respect in return. Darren looks like he's been physically slapped. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. For the first time in his life, my smooth-talking, always confident brother is completely speechless. And all of you, Lydia says, addressing the room again, you laughed. You actually laughed while he tore down the person who has probably helped every single one of you at some point. You sat there and enjoyed watching a good man get humiliated by his own family. The silence that follows is different from all the other silences tonight. This one is heavy with shame and realization and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people you look down on are the ones who deserve your respect the most. Uncle Raymond is staring at his plate like it holds the secrets of the universe. Hannah has gone completely still, her earlier smugness replaced by something that looks suspiciously like horror. My mother's face is streaked with tears that she's not even trying to hide. Lydia stands there for another long moment, letting her words sink in, letting everyone in that room confront the reality of what they've just heard. Then she looks down at me, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, someone is looking at me with something other than pity or contempt or barely disguised mockery. She's looking at me like I matter, like I'm worth defending, like I'm someone who deserves to be treated with basic human dignity instead of being used as the family punching bag. I thought you should know, she says simply, and those 5 words somehow manage to contain more respect and recognition than I've received from my own family in years. The truth is out now, hanging in the air like smoke from a fire that's burned everything down to the foundation. And for the first time all evening, I'm not the one who's been destroyed by it. For the first time in what feels like hours, but has probably only been minutes, I allow myself to sit up straighter in my chair. Not because I'm trying to make a point or prove something to these people, but because something fundamental has changed in the air around me. The weight that's been pressing down on my shoulders all evening, hell, for years, has suddenly lifted, and I can actually breathe again without feeling like I'm drowning in other people's disappointment. It's not pride that's making me sit taller. It's relief. Pure, overwhelming relief that someone finally spoke the truth out loud in a room full of people who have spent years pretending they don't see it. Someone finally said what needed to be said, and it wasn't me having to defend myself or make excuses or try to explain why my life has value even if it doesn't look like what they think success should look like. Lydia is still standing beside me, and I can feel the heat radiating from her body, but there's nothing uncomfortable about it. If anything, it feels like standing next to a campfire on a cold night, warm and protective and somehow essential. I want to say something to her, to thank her, to acknowledge what she just did, but the words aren't coming. My throat feels like it's been scrubbed with sandpaper, and honestly, I'm not sure I trust my voice not to crack if I try to speak. Instead, I just nod. One small movement of my head that somehow manages to contain everything I can't say out loud. Thank you. I see you. I understand what this cost you. It's not much, but it's all I've got right now, and somehow I think she understands. The room is still trapped in that terrible, wonderful silence, but the quality of it has changed completely. Before, It was the silence of people watching execution. Now it's the silence of people being forced to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. And most of them are finding the experience about as pleasant as a root canal performed with a rusty spoon. Darren is the first person to break. I watch it happen in real time. The careful mask he's worn his entire life just cracking down the middle like glass under pressure. His face goes through about 15 different expressions in the span of 10 seconds. Shock, denial, anger, panic, and finally settling on something that looks like pure, concentrated rage. But here's the thing about Darren's anger. It's not the righteous fury of someone who's been wronged. It's the impotent rage of someone who's been caught, and he knows it. That's not. He starts to say, then stops. Starts again. You're making it sound like. Another stop. His smooth, corporate-trained speaking voice has abandoned him completely, leaving behind the stammering confusion of a man whose carefully constructed world is collapsing around his ears. He tries to laugh it off, that go-to move that served him so well over the years. Come on, Lydia, you're being a little dramatic, don't you think? It's not like Marcus was doing me any huge favors. Brothers help each other out all the time. But the laugh rings hollow, desperate, and I can see people in the audience physically cringing at the sound of it. $3,000 and 2 weeks of unpaid labor isn't helping out, Lydia replies, her voice still calm, but carrying an edge that could cut diamond. That's sacrifice. That's putting your own life on hold to save someone else's career. And then never mentioning it, never asking for credit, never using it as leverage in situations like this. The words hit Darren like physical blows, and I watch his face tighten with each one. His mask isn't just cracking anymore. It's completely shattered, and what's underneath isn't pretty. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing my brother without the carefully crafted persona, without the charm and the confidence and the easy smile that's opened so many doors for him. What's left is just a man who's built his entire identity on being better than everyone else, and that foundation is crumbling beneath his feet. Uncle Raymond tries to come to Darren's rescue, because of course he does. Raymond's never met a situation he couldn't make worse with his mouth. Now hold on just a minute, he blusters, his face red with wine and indignation. I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, young lady, but what? Lydia turns to face him, and Raymond actually takes a step back. But you don't want to hear that the person you've been mocking all evening is actually a better man than you are? But you're uncomfortable with the idea that Marcus has done more for this family than you've ever bothered to do? But it's easier to laugh at someone else's struggles than acknowledge your own failures. Raymond's mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air. For a man who spent the entire evening throwing verbal punches, he sure doesn't know how to take them. That's not, you can't just. He's sputtering now, all his bluster and confidence evaporating under Lydia's steady gaze. But it's my mother's reaction that really gets to me. Ruth is sitting there at the head table, and for the first time tonight, maybe for the first time in years, she's actually looking at me. Really looking at me, not through me or past me, or with that expression of mild disappointment that I've grown so accustomed to. She's seeing me, and I can watch the realization dawning on her face like sunrise breaking over a mountain range. Her hand is pressed to her mouth, and there are tears streaming down her cheeks that she's not even trying to hide. Not the pretty, delicate tears that women cry in movies, but the ugly, honest tears of someone who's just realized they've been wrong about something fundamental for a very long time. Her shoulders are shaking, and she keeps shaking her head like she's trying to deny what she's hearing, but the evidence is right there in front of her, impossible to ignore. Marcus, she whispers, and her voice is so broken I almost don't recognize it. Oh, Marcus, I never. She can't finish the sentence, but she doesn't need to. I can see it all in her face. The guilt, the shame, the terrible understanding that she's been failing as a mother in ways she never even realized. The shift in the room is palpable now. It's like watching dominoes fall, one person after another being forced to confront the reality of what they've been doing, what they've been participating in, what they've been enabling with their silence and their laughter and their casual cruelty disguised as family teasing. Hannah has gone completely pale, all the color drained from her face like someone pulled a plug. Her earlier smugness has been replaced by something that looks suspiciously like horror, and she keeps glancing around the room like she's looking for an escape route. The mean girl act that served her so well over the years doesn't work when someone's holding up a mirror and forcing her to see what she really looks like. Cousin Jenny is openly crying now, her face buried in her hands as she rocks back and forth in her chair. I can hear her whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over again, and I know she's not just apologizing for tonight. She's apologizing for every time she stood by and watched, every time she chose the easy laughter over doing the right thing, every time she let me be the family punching bag because it was easier than standing up for what was right. Even the people I don't know well are starting to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Mrs. Bennett, the woman whose father's car I fixed, is staring at her plate like it might spontaneously combust. Mr. Peterson looks like he wants to crawl under the table and hide. These people are realizing that they've been complicit in something ugly, and the shame of it is written all over their faces. But it's not just shame I'm seeing. There's something else creeping into their expressions, something that looks like respect. Maybe even admiration. Because Lydia didn't just defend me. She painted a picture of who I really am, what I really do, what I'm really worth. She showed them a man who shows up when people need help, who sacrifices his own comfort for others, who doesn't keep score or demand recognition or use his good deeds as weapons in family arguments. For years, I've been the family failure, the cautionary tale, the guy who couldn't get his act together. But now, sitting here in this moment of terrible clarity, I think maybe I've been something else entirely. Maybe I've been the family backbone, the one who holds things together when they fall apart, the one who shows up when everyone else is too busy or too proud or too selfish to care. Darren makes one last desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. "This is ridiculous," he says, his voice pitched higher than usual, tinged with panic. "You're making me sound like some kind of villain. I never asked Marcus to." "No," Lydia cuts him off, and the finality in her voice stops him cold. "You never asked. You never had to ask. Because that's who Marcus is. He sees people struggling and he helps, even when those people wouldn't do the same for him. Even when those people mock him for struggling himself. Even when those people use him as a punchline at family gatherings." She pauses, looking around the room one more time, her gaze lingering on each face, each person who participated in tonight's cruelty. "That's what makes him a better man than any of you." The words hang in the air like smoke from a fire that's burned everything down to ash. And in that moment, sitting straighter in my chair with this woman standing beside me like a guardian angel in designer clothes, I finally understand something that's taken me 35 years to figure out. I don't need their approval. I don't need their recognition. I don't need them to see my worth, because my worth isn't dependent on their ability to recognize it. I am exactly who Lydia said I am. A man who shows up, who helps, who sacrifices without keeping score. And that's enough. More than enough. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. The dinner limps forward after Lydia's revelation like a wounded animal trying to pretend it's not bleeding out on the marble floor. The waiters, bless their professional hearts, continue serving dessert as if the entire social fabric of the evening hasn't been torn to shreds and set on fire. They glide between tables with their practiced efficiency, setting down plates of what I'm sure is some overpriced confection that probably has a French name and costs more per bite than most people spend on lunch. But nobody's really eating. How could they? The appetite for fancy desserts tends to disappear when you've just been forced to confront the fact that you're a terrible person who's been picking on someone who didn't deserve it. The conversations that do start up are stilted and awkward, the kind of desperate small talk people make when they're trying to pretend that nothing earth-shattering just happened. "The weather's been nice lately, hasn't it?" Someone ventures from table 2, and the forced brightness in their voice is almost painful to hear. Another person responds with equal enthusiasm about how lovely the fall colors are this year, as if discussing foliage might somehow erase the memory of what we all just witnessed. I can see Darren at the head table, frantically trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his perfect evening. He's making jokes that fall flat, telling stories that nobody's really listening to, working overtime to project that same confident charm that served him so well over the years. But it's like watching a man trying to hold water in his bare hands. The harder he grips, the more it slips through his fingers. Lydia has returned to her seat beside him, but she might as well be sitting on the moon for all the connection there is between them now. She's not looking at him, not responding to his increasingly desperate attempts to engage her in conversation, not playing the role of supportive fiancé that she's been cast in for this little production. She's sitting there with perfect posture and perfect composure, looking like a queen who's just finished executing a particularly troublesome courtier. The dynamic between them has shifted so fundamentally that it's almost fascinating to watch. An hour ago, Darren was the golden boy and Lydia was his beautiful accessory, the perfect woman who validated his success by choosing to be with him. Now she looks like a woman who's seriously reconsidering some life choices, while he looks like a man who's just realized he might have fucked up the best thing that ever happened to him. Uncle Raymond keeps shooting glances in my direction, and I can practically see the gears turning in his alcohol-addled brain. He's trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality where I'm not the family punchline anymore, where making jokes at my expense might actually have consequences. The man who was so quick with cutting remarks an hour ago now can't seem to find his voice, and honestly, it's kind of beautiful to watch. Henna has barely said a word since Lydia's speech. She's sitting there picking at her dessert with the concentrated focus of someone performing brain surgery, as if the precise arrangement of berries on her plate might somehow transport her to a universe where she didn't spend the evening being a complete bitch to someone who's helped her family more than she's ever helped anyone. But it's my mother's face that I keep coming back to. Ruth looks like she's aged 10 years in the past hour, the weight of realization settling on her features like snow accumulating on a roof until it threatens to collapse under its own burden. She keeps looking at me with this expression of dawning horror, like she's seeing me clearly for the first time and doesn't like what that says about her as a mother. Every few minutes, she opens her mouth like she's going to say something, then closes it again. What do you say when you realize you've been treating your own son like a disappointment for years, when the truth is that he's been the one holding everything together? How do you apologize for laughing when someone humiliated the person who's been quietly sacrificing for everyone else? There probably aren't words for that kind of regret. The whole scene feels surreal, like I'm watching it happen to someone else from a great distance. These people who have defined my worth for so long, who have made me feel small and inadequate and less than, suddenly seem diminished. Not because Lydia's words changed who they are, but because she finally said out loud what I should have known all along. Their opinion of me says more about them than it does about me. I realize I've been gripping my napkin so tightly that my knuckles have gone white, but it's not from anger or humiliation anymore. It's from the effort of processing this fundamental shift in how I see myself and my place in this family. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not sitting at a family gathering wondering what I did wrong, or how I could be better, or what I need to change to earn their respect. I'm sitting here knowing that I don't need to change anything, because I was never the problem. The clock on the far wall shows that it's almost 10:30, which means this torture session has been going on for over 3 hours. 3 hours of forced smiles and uncomfortable small talk and pretending that everything is normal when everyone in the room knows it's not. 3 hours of watching my brother try to rebuild his image while his fiancée sits beside him radiating disappointment and newly awakened awareness. And I decide I'm done. Not in an angry, storming out kind of way. Not with dramatic declarations or door slamming or any of the theatrical bullshit that would just give them something new to talk about for the next 5 years. Just done. Finished. Ready to leave this place and these people and go home to my real life. The one where I'm valued and appreciated and loved for who I am instead of criticized for who I'm not. I place my napkin on the table with deliberate care, the way you might handle something fragile that you don't want to break. The movement is small, but somehow it feels significant, like I'm setting down more than just fabric. I'm setting down years of trying to be good enough for people who were never going to think I was good enough anyway. I think I'm going to head out, I say quietly, not to the room in general, but to the few people at my table who might actually care. My voice is steady, calm, without any of the tremor that might have been there an hour ago. It's the voice of a man who's made a decision and is at peace with it. Great Aunt Mildred, bless her deaf little heart, actually hears me for once. Leaving already, dear? She asks, and there's genuine concern in her voice. Are you feeling all right? I'm feeling better than I have in a long time. I tell her, and it's the truth. I am feeling better. Lighter. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there until someone lifted it off my shoulders. I stand up slowly, not making a big production of it, just rising from my chair like any normal person who's decided they're ready to go home. But somehow the movement catches attention throughout the room. Conversations faltering as people notice that the evening's earlier target is preparing to leave. Darren looks up from whatever desperate story he was telling, his eyes widening slightly as he realizes what's happening. Marcus, you're not leaving already, are you? We haven't even had the champagne toast yet. His voice has that forced joviality that people use when they're trying to pretend everything is fine, but I can hear the underlying panic. He needs me to stay, needs things to go back to normal, needs to find some way to salvage this disaster of an evening. But I don't know him that. I don't know any of them that. Thanks for the dinner, I say, and my voice carries clearly across the room without me having to raise it. It was educational. There's just enough weight in that word to let everyone know that I learned something tonight, and it wasn't about proper table settings or wine pairings. I walk toward the exit, and it feels like the longest short walk of my life. Every step echoes off the marble floor, and I can feel 50 pairs of eyes tracking my movement. But for once, their attention doesn't make me want to shrink into myself. If anything, I feel like I'm getting taller with each step, standing straighter, breathing deeper. As I pass the head table, Lydia looks up at me. Our eyes meet for just a moment, and in that brief connection, I try to convey everything I couldn't say earlier. Thank you. I see what you did. I understand what it cost you. You changed my life tonight, and I will never forget it. She gives me the smallest nod in return, and somehow I know she understands. Sometimes the most important conversations happen without words. I don't look back as I push through the heavy wooden doors that lead to the lobby. I don't turn around to see if anyone follows me or calls my name or makes any last-minute attempts to fix what can't be fixed. I just walk out into the cool night air and breathe. The valet brings my Honda Civic around, and I tip him $5 even though I know he's probably wondering why someone driving a 10-year-old car was at an event in a place like this. But you know what? I don't care what he thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks anymore, and that realization is so liberating it's almost dizzying. As I drive home through the quiet suburban streets, windows down and radio playing some song I don't recognize, but like anyway, I think about Claire. She's probably still at the office, working on that project that kept her from coming tonight, and I find myself smiling at the thought of seeing her later. Really seeing her, maybe for the first time in a long time, without the shadow of my family's disapproval hanging over everything. Claire, who's never made me feel like less than enough. Claire, who appreciates what I bring to our relationship instead of focusing on what I lack. Claire, who would have stood up for me tonight if she'd been there, not because she had some agenda or point to prove, but because that's who she is. That's what love looks like. The traffic lights are mostly green, and I take it as a sign that the universe is finally on my side. By the time I pull into our driveway, I feel completely different than I did when I left the house a few hours ago. Not because anything about my circumstances has changed. I still have the same job situation, the same financial challenges, the same life that my family finds so disappointing. But I'm not carrying their disappointment anymore. I'm not responsible for their inability to see my worth. For the first time in years, I feel whole. Not broken, not lacking, not less than. Just whole. And that's everything.